I realize I'm the last person between you and lunch, so I'll try to keep it to my designated 15 minutes. So as Alex mentioned, I'm going to be providing some pretty high-level updates on what's happening in the US and what's happening at the Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials, or RSB. So for anyone who doesn't know a lot about ACC, the American Chemistry Council, we're the largest chemical trade association in the US, and we really strive to deliver business value through exceptional advocacy at all levels of government. And even though we are US-based, because of the nature of a lot of the issues, we end up doing a lot of international advocacy as well, and interacting with our Sept counterparts and engaging on issues across the world. ACC is a one-stop shop. In addition to the expected state and federal lobbyists, we have an economics department in-house. Martha spoke to the group in Savannah earlier this year. We also have communications, legal, everything within that support our advocacy efforts. The Pine Chemistry Panel, which Alex mentioned, is housed within ACC's Chemical Product and Technology Division. And so this is a division where we have about 50 similar sector-specific groups, and managers like myself help those companies manage their issues, whether it be developing a life cycle assessment, looking for regulatory advising, looking for outreach to the value chain. All those types of issues are things that we do on a sector-by-sector basis within CPTD. Now, the Pine Chemistry Panel has been at ACC since 2011. And we're really focused on promoting stewardship of the nation's renewable forest resources, as well as promoting the use of natural, renewable, and raw materials. So, as I said earlier, I'm going to be presenting just very high-level overviews. So in the federal government, there's been a lot of activity, especially with the new administration. The Farm Bill is important to many people across the pine chemistry industry, and it is a piece of legislation in the US that gets renewed every few years. And why it's important is because it touches on the bio-based products industry. So there's a lot of funding that goes to the US Department of Agriculture or other programs where bio-based products are preferred in federal procurement, whether it is the innovation of further biorefineries or bio-based products. So it's really important that this Farm Bill get passed. Right now it's gone through both houses. Unfortunately, they're kind of at a standstill for something completely unrelated to farms, bio-based energy, and what you would expect to find in a Farm Bill. They're actually there's no consensus over food stamps and welfare for people. So that's actually what's holding up that piece of legislation, even though it involves so much more than just that portion. The carbon tax bill is actually pretty interesting, as it was introduced by a conservative, and the other two co-sponsors are both conservatives. What this bill would do if passed, it would remove certain fuel excise taxes that are currently in existence, but it would implement a tax on greenhouse gas emissions. Our federal affairs don't think this type of bill would pass, especially in the culture of Congress right now and with the elections coming up so soon. But it's just interesting to see that there are more and more conservatives pushing for solutions such as carbon taxes. And so, and there are even industry who have been supportive of carbon taxes. So it'll be interesting to see, while we don't really expect this one to go somewhere, bills down the future could be, have more potential to move forward. The Sustainable Chemistry Bill also has some pertinence to the pine chemistry industry. ACC has supported this bill from the get-go, and we are actively pushing for it to move forward. What it would do, if passed, would create an interagency organization that would assess the state of sustainable chemistry, including bio-based chemistry in the US, and develop a 2-year plan on how they would like to see sustainable chemistry move forward in the United States. From there would be the opportunity to apply for grants. Company could get grants to do more innovative research on developing the use of plants in chemistry, among other things. So that's something, again, that probably won't pass because the elections are coming up in November. It's not a high priority, but it's something that we really are actively pushing. The renewable fuel standard probably doesn't affect everyone in this room, but it has been a point of contention recently in the US. In the US, there are different pathways for feedstock to be utilized, and they don't match up with the ones in Europe. So, for example, crude tall oil is not an approved pathway to create biofuel and meet the renewable fuel standards in the US. However, pulp wood is a pending pathway in the renewable fuel standard. And really the big conflict with the renewable fuel standard right now is that between the farmers who farm corn for ethanol production and that of the oil refiners. The current administration has shown support for both of them, and so it's very hard to strike a deal that is beneficial to both sides. And so that's been developing, and it has been all year, and it seems to change week to week. So, they thought they were going to have an agreement on making revisions to the RFS back in April, and here we are late September, and we seem to be no closer to that. And the last thing in this federal policy slide that I want to talk about is the trade tariffs. So I don't know how closely anyone has been following the termed trade war with China, but this year the administration has been putting out tariffs on goods from China. And there's been multiple lists, and until this most recent list, we call it List 3, or the $200 billion list, most chemicals weren't affected. However, this most recent list, which I again said was looking at putting tariffs on $200 billion worth of chemicals, goods from China, the comment period for that closed 2 weeks ago, and that included all pine chemistries on that list. Just yesterday, the administration did decide to move forward and impose those tariffs. Starting on September 24th, there will be a 10% tariff on all of those goods found on that list. And then starting in 2019, they will bump that up to 25%, which was the initially proposed amount. So a little bit of time between moving up to that full 25%, but ACC has been actively with other associations working to, try to get a handle on these tariffs, because from what our economics department says, it's not going to be good for industry. It's going to raise, if they continue in the manner that they have, and it's going to raise end product prices for consumers, as well as the potential for the loss of a lot of jobs. So this is something that ACC has been very active in and very eager to gain support from a wide range of stakeholders, not just those in the US, but all over who could potentially be affected. I'm really not going to talk too much about these federal regulations. We covered a couple of them through discussions on the earlier slide, and there just hasn't been a lot of update to them over the last few years. What I did want to touch on are these kind of de facto regulations that are coming out because of companies and nonprofits saying, hey, we should stop using these chemistries in our products. And so we've seen Walmart come out with sustainable standards for their products and what they'll sell. I mean, a lot of the big players, Target, many of you may know SC Johnson has a similar thing where there's 2 pine chemistries, which they have said they will no longer contain in their products. And so this type of activity is only being encouraged by the nonprofits with initiatives such as Mind the Store, which is a report card for many of the major retailers. And if X chemistry is found in any of the products that they sell, they could be getting a public F from this nonprofit. So this isn't something that we see ending anytime soon, but it is something that we've certainly been engaging on for a lot of different chemistries who are facing the same types of issues that pine chemistries may be facing in product deselection. That's not even coming from a government level, but it's coming from the retailer level. So state activity has also been very busy. With this current administration, a lot of states have been frustrated and decided to take activities into their own hand. There's a lot of states with renewable fuel standards, even more states with renewable portfolio standards. And really what the most concerning is that these states that are creating renewable portfolio standards, such as California, may be treating something as completely carbon neutral, which can affect the price of feedstocks for those in the industry. And California's low carbon initiative actually is not just limited to California anymore. It's been adopted up the West Coast, even into, I believe, British Columbia and Canada. So, we've been keeping an eye on how low carbon initiatives, low carbon taxes really can have an impact on those in the pine chemicals industry. Washington State, for example, has a ballot initiative that, if passed, would impose a carbon fee. And while energy-intensive industries are exempt, those who are refiners are not exempt, and so could cause, there's a lot of pushback on that right now as well. And finally, with the last couple minutes, I know we're a little bit over, I wanted to talk about RSB, the Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials. So this is an independent organization. It's really made up of a bunch of different stakeholders, industry, nonprofits, academics, scientists, and my main role with them as ACC on behalf of the Pine Chemistry Panel is a full-fledged member of RSB, is to really be involved in the development of standards. And so this year, RSB has taken on two different real big initiatives. The first one being the revision of the standard for certification of bioproducts. Now, they revisit these standards every 5 years, but they were looking to expand the scope, incorporate advanced materials, and figure out other ways where you can certify biomaterials, whether it be by biomass balance or other ways that companies traditionally use to prove that they are actually selling a bio-based product. What I've been most involved with is the technical working group on displacement effects. That is looking at how, an example would be molasses. If you want to move molasses and shift it from its traditional uses to be a feedstock for biofuel, what are those displacement effects? Something has to fill molasses' gap whenever it gets moved to biofuel. So whatever that is, what is the greenhouse gas emissions from that? What type of effects are we seeing when we're shifting markets around because we are incentivizing biofuels? And so that group has been working on a methodology to most appropriately and accurately quantify those displacement effects and something that can be reasonably put into use by the industry. And then finally, the annual meeting is coming up in December, and so those standards above, if finalized, which the first one definitely should be, the second one most likely will be voted on and then adopted by RSB. And so I know RSB is a lot bigger in Europe than it is in the US, but it's still something that we really keep a touch on because it can be affected and adopted anywhere since it is so global and it is well respected because of the stakeholders who participate in the group. So thank you so much.